Morning to some of you, good afternoon if you're here in Europe, and good evening to those of you who are joining us today from Australia. Thank you so much for taking the time to mark World Sight Day with us this year. We are delighted to have you, as always, and to have the opportunity to engage on important topics. Just a shout out to our colleagues in New Zealand and say hello to you. I know not all of you are able to stay up quite this late on a school night, but we will of course be sending you the recording of this event, and hopefully we'll see you very soon on a future webinar. So World Sight Day, as you know, provides all of us really with a very good opportunity to highlight the issues of concern to those of us across all aspects of our community. And this year we are focusing on the importance of the patient voice in innovation across various aspects, from diagnosis, care to treatment, for all people living with sight loss, and in particular for people living with retinal degenerative diseases. For decades, Retina International and its members, as well as many, many stakeholders, have worked tirelessly to ensure that patients and their representatives are active and informed partners in decision-making along the life cycle of retinal research from bench to bedside. We have developed specific training and educational tools to really equip our community with the knowledge to participate confidently in what we know is a very complex and a very dynamic space. Our members are represented across many initiatives across the globe, across all continents, really, in public patient involvement in research, PPI, at government agency level, at forums, at regional decision-making platforms, as well as playing a key advisory role in the design of clinical trials, in presenting the lived experience, and in providing advice to regulators and to the payers alike. The fact is, and why we are here today, is to explain to you that all of this is now under threat. It's starting with the EU Commission. It's currently reviewing its general pharmaceutical legislation, which includes paediatric and orphan legislation. And there is considerable political pressure from certain factions within the Parliament to eliminate the voting rights of patients and their representatives on two of the European Medicines Agency's most influential committees. And they are the Committee for Medicinal Products for Human Use, also known as the CHMP, many of you will be familiar with, and also the Pharmacovigilance and Risk Assessment Committee, the PRAC. So throughout this year, since March, in fact, over 70 patient organisations, including Retina International, has joined the call to really uphold patients' rightful place at the decision-making table and to keep patients voting. The coming weeks may determine the future of patient involvement in EU medicines regulation specifically, but ORI believes fundamentally that if this happens, then there is a real risk of a contagion effect globally. It is possible that patients could find themselves removed from discussion forums and decision-making. We've already seen this happen anecdotally, because obviously people know that this is happening from the legislative review perspective. And we've already seen patients be removed from panels and from conferences that purport to be about them and have their name in the title. So after that is the threat of removal from the table where decisions about them are taken. In order to act, we must be aware that this is happening. And so today, the team felt it was really important to highlight this issue, why it matters not only to patients, but to society as a whole. We in ORI, we want to demonstrate the positive impact patient engagement has had and continues to have, the concrete actions that are being taken by patients and their representatives to drive innovation that is meaningful, but also that is available, affordable, and accessible. We are joined today by some of the most active advocates for patient engagement within our community. And so I'm really delighted to welcome all of them for giving their time for this very important subject. So our panelists today may need no introduction to many of you. Our first is Christina Fasser, who is former president of Retina International and represents Retina Swiss, as well as being a volunteer on the European Patient Advocacy Group at ERNI. Ben Shaberman is here, who is the Vice President of Science Communications at the Foundation Fighting Blindness USA. We also have Russell Wheeler, who is a patient advocate at the LHON Society, a volunteer at ERNI, Eurordis, and Lieber's hereditary optic neuropathy groups. Kirk Stephenson, who is a consultant ophthalmic surgeon and retina specialist at the Mater Hospital in Dublin, and is also a consultant ophthalmic surgeon at the Temple Street Children's Health Hospital here in Dublin also. But let's start with Silvia Cerolini. Silvia is the CEO of Eyes on the Future and a coordinator of the global RDH12 Alliance. Silvia will give us her experience of driving research towards a therapy as a mother of a child living with RDH12. So Silvia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Avril. Just checking you can hear me all right. Great. So thank you very much, Avril and Claire, for the invitation to be with us today on such an important day for our community. It's really an absolute pleasure to be able to share a little bit what we're doing and as an example of what happens, what magic happens when patients are not just involved, but they help lead. As you mentioned, I am involved in the community because of my daughter. She is 11. Her name is Vicky, and she's affected by RDH12, which is, of course, one of the genes causing Leber congenital amaurosis. A few years ago, together with my husband, we decided we couldn't really stay still and wait until she would, progressively deteriorate, her sight would deteriorate, and we wanted to do something about it. And we made a personal commitment. I made a personal commitment to look at my daughter in the eyes and do everything I can to help her continue to see the world. So we founded Eyes on the Future, which is a UK-based non-for-profit organization. I like to say that we're small but mighty. We punch above our weight in terms of impact. We are fully volunteer-based, but we have been partnering with many of the other organizations here in the panel, Retina International, Foundation Fighting Blindness, and many of others as well. And I also coordinate the global patient group with patients affected by RDH12. We bring together patients from over 20 countries, and the group keeps growing. Now, over the years, we have done a lot of things that patient organizations do. We've been involved in, supporting research, academic research. We raised millions of dollars. We brought people together. We created registries. We even, thanks to our work, we managed to manufacture and produce a potential gene therapy for our community. For those who are familiar with the landscape of research, this would be a similar therapy to what is now available for RP65 patients, so a drug called Luxturna. But this will be available for us, for RDH12 as a gene. So thanks to our work, we managed to actually manufacture this drug. The problem, though, is the vials with the drug has been sitting on a freezer for a few years. So despite we have made all this progress and we've come all this long way, there was no investment in moving towards a clinical trial. Simply, this was not commercially viable. There was no investment put in. And we really, the last few years have been a massive roller coaster for us, trying to find a way to actually move this forward. So as you can imagine, extremely frustrating for our standpoint, knowing that the potential therapy that could help our community is sitting somewhere in a freezer. So we kind of decided we have to do something about it. And so that's where we come in, and that's where the innovation came in, and we tried to kind of pioneer a new model. And working with also many other partners, including, the Foundation Fighting Blindness, we have been able now to look and develop a new way. And very, very proud of the partnership that we signed a few months ago directly with the biotech company that has the rights to this gene therapy for RDH12. A company called Opus Genetics. So we're very proud with the partnership that we're able to sign, that we have signed with Opus, which effectively is not just a partnership of pulling together financial resources, although yes, we are putting, a significant investment from our community into this, but this goes well beyond this traditional kind of venture philanthropy models. This is a full model of co-development of the therapy. So effectively, our RDH12 global community and Opus are working hand in hand on any aspect of bringing these vials from the freezer to a clinical trial, which includes innovating all steps of the way, really with the patient at the center. So anything from rethinking our regulatory pathway to looking at more efficient manufacturing strategies, to designing the trial and leveraging real world data or even kind of AI and some innovation and tech to actually make it more efficient and faster. So we're really taking an active role, looking at every aspect and working with the regulators to try to move this as fast as possible. So why am I telling you all of this? Is it's really as an example of what we can achieve when patients are not just have a seat at the table, but they actually lead the work. And I'm really excited moving forward, of course, for our community. We target, hopefully we'll be able to move into this trial next year, but also about this as a model for other patient organizations and as a blueprint of innovation that can really bridge between the gaps right now of lack of investment in rare diseases and something that can take finally these therapies to the patients that need it. So I'm gonna stop here. I know we'll have some time for questions at the end, but yeah.
Thank you, Silvia, for giving us, I think, a very clear picture of your experience and what has been obviously a very frustrating and long journey, but the opportunity now to move things forward, the fact that we as patients can never give up. I mean, not everybody is going to be in a position to be able to do what you have done. I know you have a background in this space and you understand it, which is really important, but it just goes to show you, I think, what can be done and where patient voice and patient determination can really lead to reversing, turning things around in a positive way. And as you say, a good model and something I think that our members and stakeholders would be particularly interested in maybe following up with you on as well, and keeping a close, if you don't mind me using the term, eye on, because it is something that I think is very encouraging for all of us. And so really to our panelists, to follow on from what Silvia has presented, and many of you, all of you, have experience of decisions that have been taken, of course, that have led to very important realities for this community. But Christina, I might come to you first, if that's okay. You've been a patient advocate in this research space, in the retinal space, for over 40 years now, and you have built significant relationships across the board with researchers, with clinicians, and with innovators as well. And I think it's fair to say that you have created the seat at the table for many of us. And while we've been very fortunate in this community to engage so many excellent innovators and researchers, clinicians, etc., to listen to us and to take account of our experiences in their own decision-making about their own innovation, we have moved beyond, let's just say, tokenism and tick box exercises for sure, but there are still challenges that remain. And I wonder if you could speak maybe to that element, how the community can better engage with all of the stakeholders, improve decision-making, and why it is so important and has been so important in your experience.
When I listened to you, so first, Silvia, congratulations. And it was very informative, and I wish you good luck that it works. Avril, when we look back 30 years, and I hear you speaking today about the legislation, we are back at the same point in time, because 30 years ago, patients had no voice. Patients had to really insist to sit on the tables and to be considered as a partner. Before we were just a patient, and we had to do what science, doctors, regulators thinks that's the best for us. And I'm very concerned that we might go slightly back in that area. What helped us to come out of this gap, that was persistence. Persistence in building up relationships, listening to the young researchers, listening to the specialists and scientists, listening to the ophthalmologist, and to identify parts where we really could help and bring a difference, which they cannot find. So that was in the beginning, of course, genetic research, because without the family trees, nothing was possible. And with this, we built up the communication. We taught people how to speak with scientists, what you can expect and what you can't expect. And through the relations with the younger researchers, you get then also links into new fields, because not every young researcher we have supported and have talked to or invited to meetings ended up in the science and academia. Many of them ended up in the industry, and there were a useful resource for supporting and telling us what's coming on, and also to learn how industry works and how regulatory bodies work. So it's a constant work to talk, to be there, to speak, and to promote wherever you can. Give your insight. Sometimes it's not very welcome, but it's important to say what really matters to us. And at present, we really do have that discussion about patient-reported outcome measures, what's really a difference for us patients, how we would like to have a therapy. Would we like to have a drug every day, an injection every day, or perhaps once in lifetime? Of course, these are all things that seems to be a vision for the future, but as a matter of fact, we have to be clear about those things and communicate them very clearly and to everybody that wishes to hear, but also to those that don't wish to hear. Industry
Christina,
had made, yeah?
Go ahead. I was going to ask you, in relation to that, because, obviously from the perspective of Retina International, our focus has been, and that of our members has been very much on funding basic research with a view towards therapeutics. But as you know very well, and as you mentioned, the patient voice is required now across a very broad spectrum, from that bench to bedside. And how do you think we as a community can address what are, constantly changing areas, and as we see constant changing in policy and legislation, and what can we do together and what can organizations like ours and those we represent do to ensure that we are making, for want of a better word, people listen?
Yes, I think we have to be sure that we have people with different qualities, that we have, and I think for that the young community is really there to inspire young researchers to come into the field and to stay in the field. Then we do need people that know how to talk to industry, how to develop a patient protocol, people that have a good information. What is visual impairment, how you measure it, how you measure improvement or stagnation or worsening. People that understand this wording and can translate this to the human experience of a patient with retinitis pigmentosa or another degenerative disease. And then we also need a third group, and these are, in my opinion, the policymakers that really know how to talk to the politicians, how to talk and draft policies, because that's, once again, a completely different attitude. And when we see now the politics not wanting us to be on boards like EMA or on other boards that take decisions about drugs and programs, etc., they are afraid that we cost too much. So we have to have the possibility to talk in their language and to make sure. And I would like you to remember the motto of the World of the People with Disability is nothing about us without us. And I think that's
Absolutely.
very important. And
That's
so we
very
need
good.
different personalities, different people, and each of these people has its or her place. And then the most important are the communicators down the line to the patients in the countries and tell them what they can do and what they should like take up.
Thank you, Christina. I think this is really important advice. And I suppose in so doing, having the evidence to demonstrate the cost of inaction, the impact of doing nothing, and the fact that we can help support not only those people that are affected, but society as a whole if we're listened to. And I think that's also something that you've advocated.
And I think today we might have even a more important job to do, because science and rational based science is at the moment under a certain threat. And since money funding from the political area moves because of the world situation more to the defense, it
Yes.
might be that funding, which would be really crucial, will stop in our area, and with that we will face a huge loss of knowledge, and that we have to see how we can avoid that.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, Christine. It's a really important point to make. And I might just move to you, Ben, as someone who is obviously working for Foundation Fighting Blindness. You've seen a lot of patient engagement in bringing the lived experience to decision-making processes. And could you explain what you feel would be the impact of removing that patient voice from your perspective, and give us some insight into your own experience?
Sure. And one thing I want to say is I'm listening to Silvia and Christina, and I'm thinking about all the people with vision loss that I've met over the years, is don't underestimate the power of your story. Not only the challenges of vision loss, but the victories. And that's one thing that's kept me so engaged over 2 decades, is people with vision loss are heroic, whether it's being able to walk to the mailbox and get your mail, or doing something great athletically. And I think it's really important to help the sighted world understand that. And where I've seen a difference made, I'm thinking of 3 areas, and most immediately is on Capitol Hill here in the US, where research funding for our National Eye Institute, which funds so much important research for inherited retinal diseases, is under threat from the White House, the presidency. They want to cut the National Eye Institute by as much as 40% and maybe even eliminate it. But thanks to our efforts and the voice of the patient, that Congress, our Senate and our House of Representatives are opposing that for now. So that's some early good news. The story is not over. I mean, we have so many political challenges, but the patient voice has made a difference there. Another place where I think the patient voice is really important is in your communities, is when there are seminars and events where researchers and companies are out there talking about therapies. Be there to tell your story. There are many researchers working on therapies that don't necessarily get to meet people who are affected, and your story will make their efforts that much more powerful and urgent. You can really move the research community by telling your stories. And finally, in the US, many eye doctors, optometrists, ophthalmologists, they don't understand our space at all. And when somebody comes in and is diagnosed or they're losing vision, the doctors often say, there's nothing we can do. Well, there is so much that can be done. And the patient voice can be so powerful in letting them know, hey, you can get genetic testing, there are clinical trials, there's a registry, there's great research. And the last comment I want to make, and I'm thinking about Silvia's journey. Silvia, when you first started out with Eyes on the Future, you knew what your end game was, but I don't think you knew how you were going to get there. And you're still figuring that out.
I still don't know.
I think that's an important lesson for people who are affected, that you don't have to know your end game, or you do need to know your end game, but the path is going to be windy and circuitous. Just keep pushing and you'll figure it out.
Well said.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. And often we say in RI here, we always say, you know, you start a journey and you think you're going to finish it with the people around you. It could be a very different reality who stands next to you at the finish line, because it's going to take all sorts, really all types of skills and all sorts of people with various different perspectives to get where you need to go, and experience, as you said, Christina, as well, to get where you need to go to. And it's important to look beyond the network to see who can support you in achieving that really audacious goal that you have, you know, and such an important one. But your point, I think, is very well made as well, Ben, you know, that you know, don't underestimate what you know as an expert. You know, you're the person living with the disease, and therefore you are expert in how to live with it, and what the needs are, and what the requirements are, what the cost of inaction is, what you can advocate for, and how you can advocate. And I think, you know, the proof is in the pudding with the fact that you have gotten support on Capitol Hill at this really challenging time to support the National Eye Institute, which is obviously based in the United States, but which has such significance in the context of the global research effort when it comes to all forms of eye disease. So I think, you know, the knowing your value and knowing your worth is really important for patients and for communities at all levels. Russell, I might just come to you now. Your experience is extensive, particularly in EMA committees. I mean, you've sat as a patient representative on these committees and various different advisories over the years, and you will have seen firsthand the impact of the patient involvement in those committees. And from your perspective, you know, removing that, I mean, you know, what impact do you think that would have if that was no more, if that ability to be able to sit in these forums was taken away?
Well, in a word, disastrous, I think, is the only thing I can say, quite honestly. And it's still a work in progress. A couple of quick caveats. These are my own views. They're not the views of, certainly not of EMA nor even sometimes of my fellow patients. I tread my own path. And even EMA, I think that my experience, by the way, is mostly in Europe. I've had interactions with the FDA, but they're much fewer than those with EMA and with other European institutions. But even within EMA, who I think have a genuine, sincere, and long-standing commitment to patient involvement, it still can be improved, and they should be trying to do better all of the time. A couple of quick principles I'd like to get across is that for me, one principle is that we need to recognize regulators as our friends. And essentially, we have the same goals. We all want the same thing. Sometimes we may have different ideas on how we get there. HTA, it's a little bit more nuanced, because sometimes those who are looking at the cost efficiency of treatments may have a different goal than patients. but essentially their role is to ensure fairness. What's fair for the population as a whole may sometimes seem unfair to a subset of that population, and we just got to recognize that. We are going to not like the outcomes of some assessments. That's inevitable. What we've got to do, I think, is get involved, get in there, understand the other person's viewpoint, understand why a decision goes against us. And the simple fact is that sometimes a decision we don't like could still be the correct decision. But it's certainly not always the case. Mistakes can be made even with the best of intentions. Tools are imperfect. We need to develop better tools to make sure that regulators are able to make correct decisions. I'm trying to quickly flick through a few things. I think we have to push both regulators where we think that they're making mistakes, but we have to push our friends in industry as well at times. And when we've listened to the regulators, if we think they have some valid points, we need to share those with our friends in industry and make sure that we do what we can together to get the decision that we all need. I was interested actually in Christina's comment, and I'm glad she used this phrase, nothing about us without us, because actually it's a phrase that I really dislike. Why do I dislike it? Certainly not because I don't embrace it. I do embrace it, but it speaks really to fairness and doing the right thing. And as we're now realizing, doing the right thing is becoming a little bit unpopular in the world right now. And I think that this phrase is important. I mean, don't for a moment suggest we drop that concept, but I think we're all about proving that patient involvement is a more efficient process. We can't get proper and effective decisions if we exclude patients. It's a nonsense to think that things can be done without us, but we need to make sure that we do it on a cost efficiency basis, really, for it to be sustainable. A couple of very quick examples. I mean, within EMA, I've always been hugely impressed with the competence and the empathy that those people possess, and the fact that we are completely aligned in where we want to get. But that doesn't mean that we haven't had our disagreements. Sometimes quite strong disagreements, and it's still, even recently, I found that in talking through those agreements, they've started to understand a little bit more that we're not just interested in, if you'll forgive the expression, blindly seeking an approval without being able to justify the decision that needed to get there. The same goes with HTA. As I say, it's a little bit more nuanced, it's a bit more difficult, but I've had personal involvement in, well, 3, maybe actually 4 HTA exercises where I can honestly say that the patient involvement was what delivered the correct or the positive decision for approval. And that involvement, I must also say, is really important at the margins. Strong and effective patient involvement isn't going to get a poor treatment approved. But so often, actually, it comes down to the wire. And when it comes down to the wire, it's the patient involvement that is more likely than not to tip it over the edge. And I've seen that myself on a number of occasions. I've had HTA agencies say to me, your testimony, not me personally, but your patient testimony is what allowed us to deliver this positive decision. And in fact, we wouldn't have done that without you. But it's a team effort. We need everyone to work together on this. I think that's probably the best thing I can say.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. And I have had that experience, Russell, where I have seen evidence provided by patients sway decisions positively, in ways that are unexpected but really clear. And sometimes, and going to your point, actually, Ben, patients who are living with this reality, who are, coming from their homes, not members of organizations, just telling the reality, speaking the truth about their experiences, has had real and lasting effect, and that's why this challenge is so frustrating, I suppose, to all of us. And I think it's important to mention at this point that the European reality that we are discussing right now, the European Medicines Agency values highly the engagement of patients and do not want to see any diminishment of that voice within the space. So this is purely political. And it's something that, is, I think we should say, because regulators do recognize that value. They do recognize that value and encourage it. And I know from our experience as Retina International with regulators, they're currently working with us on trying to find better ways, more accessible ways in which patients with vision loss can provide advice and input that is useful, and that is conveying their real experience as well. So that there are active discussions going on right now to try to find better ways, despite this challenge that is happening in the background. And Kirk, I might turn to you now, as a consultant and somebody who works with within the hospital settings. I know that you've just returned from work in Canada to Dublin, and you're working not only with adults but mostly with pediatrics as well in the area of ophthalmology. But from your perspective, we've talked a lot about innovation, in the context of drug development, from bench to bedside. But when you think about the delivery of care, we have to make room, obviously, in the advent of new therapeutics and to develop new pathways. From your perspective, what is the potential for patients to support that reality?
First of all, thank you, Avril and Retina International, for inviting me to join this very important discussion on such an important and critical day. So we've talked a lot about the development of new treatments and the involvement from that side, whereas a lot of my experience is in the diagnostic part or diagnostic half of the pathway. And looking at Christina's comment there of stepping back to almost 30 years ago where we were with patient involvement, although there is that worry, I think that we're in a positive place from having worked in a couple spots in Canada. Just from a scientific and clinician basis, we have a young, motivated, dedicated, interested population of researchers and scientists that are pushing in this direction. And people are more aware of the problems that we face. So even if there's some, like you say, political barriers, we're at a place where we can, I think, bypass, hopefully, and remain optimistic to keep moving forwards. Ben had it very nicely illustrated with this circuitous route where you get there and there's barriers that continually come up, but you just have to keep pushing. I think the patient voice is key in what I do. So rare diseases, especially inherited retinal diseases, do not fit into the standard clinical ophthalmology pathway. So we were talking earlier about how many optometrists and ophthalmologists have very little idea about these conditions. And I think it was Ben that said that, you see, you've got this problem, there's nothing we can do, I'm sorry, see you later. And that really has this major emotional impact of being abandoned. And now that there's more that we can do, I think in terms of not only diagnosis and genetic testing and novel treatments, but the supports we can put in place because we're a little bit better educated from listening to patients. So getting that buy-in is really difficult. And some people just have had such a bad experience in the past that the trust is gone. So I think that getting out there in this kind of forum and being able to say that, look, there's more we can do. We're listening. What would you like? This isn't cataract surgery where you come in and then we give you a few options and we say, look, this will change your vision, but the decision is not as life-altering. It's not, the cost is different. So what I really think important is I just take the time to try and listen to my patients. I know that sounds a bit judgmental, but just having that time in that right setting where you can bring people in and say, look, what do you know? Where are we now? What have you been told? What would you like to get out of today? And just walking people through. And then it doesn't finish at that stage where we're lucky in Ireland and in the UK to have this group called ECLOs, Eye Clinic Liaison Officers, which is a fantastic addition to the whole support structure we have in place. So these are individuals, many of whom have lived experience of vision loss, and they have just the biggest network to signpost relevant services, to support emotionally, to support from an education point of view with the kids that I see. So I think that's really important that we support. And just one last comment is that I think we're a lot like teachers as doctors. The teachers, if there's no students, they don't have a job. As doctors, if we don't have patients, same thing. If we don't listen to our patients, we won't have them for very long. So I think it's in everyone's best interest that we listen and we advocate for patient involvement in the committees that you mentioned, but just in general day-to-day healthcare as well. It's something that's definitely missing, I think, from a lot of health services.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I think, we know from working with clinicians more and more as therapies, are translated to the clinic, and trying to create a better end-to-end service for patients that comes from the patient experience, that comes from the patient reality, what they have learned, what they feel could be done better. And the fact that there are opportunities to change that reality and make, create a better environment is really important as well, because we talk about therapies and the development of therapies, but at the end of the day, it's people like you, Kirk, who are going to be delivering those therapies, and you need to ensure that you have the infrastructure and the supports as well for patients in the delivery of that care. So it's important to also have those conversations and to be free to have those conversations. But just before I open to the floor here, because I know we have some questions, just Silvia, is there any comments that you would make on this subject yourself?
Yeah, I think I mean, it really resonates with me, the idea of it's a journey, right? It's a journey. We all know where we want to push through, but we need to take every day as it comes. And I think what Ben was saying, we absolutely should not underestimate the impact that patients can have. And I know Christina touched on it as well. When I started my own journey, when Vicky was diagnosed, I had no idea about where this journey will take me personally, professionally, as a family, as a parent. I actually thought that research was this perfect world where everything was, figured out and perfect and amazing. And it is to a certain extent, because amazing things get discovered. But then you realize that as a patient, you have a huge power to bring people together, to push boundaries, to align interest, to things that other players cannot do, that industry cannot do, or regulators that simply they don't see and they cannot do. So really not underestimate the impact that we can achieve if we work together as a community, as a group.
Thank you. Absolutely. I might just pass over now in the interest of time to you, Claire. Just if there are any questions or comments from our participants here today.
Yeah, sure. We have a couple of comments, but there is a question maybe directed to Silvia, perhaps. How can people living with retinal diseases get started in evidence-based patient advocacy, and where should they begin?
Oh, fantastic question. Well, get involved, reach out to some of the groups here, some of the in this panel, your local group, wherever you're sitting. Reach out and understand kind of what's happening, understand what's happening in your space, talk to people, and kind of figure out where you can get involved. And there are so many things and so many aspects. I think Russell was touching on some of them as well, in terms of bringing the voice of the community, and being involved in presentations, being involved in activities that are run. I mean, it can start with kind of baby steps, and then you kind of understand where that will take you. But really start kind of figuring out in your network where to go where you're sitting in your country, and feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to also talk offline if you want to, go, whoever asked this question, if you want to compare notes on how to start and where to go.
Thanks, Silvia. We have Ben there as well.
I just wanted to add that getting involved can include getting in a patient registry. We have our registry at the foundation, the My Retina Tracker registry. There are registries all over the world. That way you're getting on the radar screen of researchers. There are many natural history studies you can get involved in where you're followed to better understand the course of disease and vision loss. And just by getting involved in an organization like the Foundation Fighting Blindness or Fighting Blindness Ireland or Retina UK or whomever, you're making the patient voice stronger. So I just wanted to add those sort of tactical things that can be done.
Thank you, Ben. Russell, do you want to go next there?
Just a very quick shout out actually for the education hub that Retina International is running, because everything that I said about my involvement with regulators, with HTA agencies, you can't do it unless you can speak the language of those people. And in order to be effective in liaising with them, you have to be able to understand where they're coming from. If you don't understand why they're making a decision that you don't like, you really are completely in the dark when it comes to trying to combat that decision. So learn, join with the other patient groups, and as the old saying goes, and I think Silvia was implying this as well, we're much stronger together. The old saying, if you want to travel fast, go alone, but if you want to travel far, go with others.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Russell. You preempted my ending because I was going to plug the Education Hub, which we're taking applications for at the moment. It will be beginning in December, and Ellen is here online in the bean, so we might do a quick word on that. Benedict, you had your hand up there next if you wanted to go ahead. Benedict, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Benedict? Okay, we can't hear you, unfortunately. I'm afraid we can't hear you. We'll come back to you, Benedict. How about that? Avril, do you want to go next there?
Yes, I just wanted to make a point in relation to evidence and the importance of understanding the reality of the lived experience of people affected by retinal degenerative diseases, because I think it's been brought up by all of the panelists here today that decision makers don't understand the complexity of our reality in this community. We have 300 different genes responsible for IRDs. There are considerable challenges with other rare eye diseases, and of course there are complexities around the age-related macular degenerations. There are different forms, geographic atrophy, wet and dry forms of AMD, and other diabetes-related eye diseases, and they're all specific communities with specific needs, but ultimately, the ultimate reality is they're affected by vision loss and require the same supports. So there are some commonalities here that we need to understand in order to be able to advocate broadly. And in Retina International, we have developed a number of evidence studies over the past couple of years where we've looked at the impact of these conditions on individuals, and we've just encouraged people who might be interested in advocating at a local level to utilize that data, because it is quite strong, and it shows how important this community is, how underserved it is, how marginalized it is, and how much how you can better understand what the needs are, and sometimes those needs are not as complicated as people might think, and might affect a broader population than people might imagine who are making decisions. So one change might affect a lot of people, but it takes a lot to get to that reality. So I just wanted to make a point about the importance of evidence, and using that evidence collectively. So I see Claudette.
I would like to add something, Avril.
Yes, please.
I think it's very important, because this webinar sounds that we need just only cracks that can extremely well communicate with science, industry, etc. But I think the most important is the basis. So if somebody gets the diagnosis, get in touch with your local community, be part of them. And because when we are asked, when we say we would like to defend the case of people with RP65, then they will ask you, how many people are affected and how many are in your group? And when we then have to answer 2, then we are not anymore considered to be really representative. So we also need to go to the basis, encourage people to be member of the organizations, and bring from downstream the input what's really needed. So also somebody who has the feeling, I'm not an academic, I can't do anything. Please go in your groups and share your daily living, your experiences, get advice from other parents that have children with visually impaired, or other young people that are in studies, etc., and exchange. And out of the richness of this exchange, people like you, Avril, or Ben, or Sylvie, then you can take up it to the regulators, to the bodies, to the policymakers, and you have a huge basis that is backing you up. And I think that's very important, because some of the international regulators, they may just meet somebody and then ask. And if these people say more or less the same thing as we do, then we are really credible and forceful. So everybody, it doesn't matter what is your educational status or economic status or where you live, be part of a member organization of Retina International, or also another organization with people with retinal degenerations, and then we are really strong.
Thanks, Christina. Claudette, I believe you had your hands up. Do you want to say something?
Yes, I do, actually. I'm probably the oldest patient advocate in years and experience. And when I think what we started with, a handful of patients worldwide, 0 funding, no genes, all we had was hope and the strength of our own conviction. So I think when I think really how much progress we've made over the last 45 years, it's amazing. And we have so many tools that we have now. So we mustn't disparage ourselves to say, we're having a problem. If you think these are problems, it's nothing to what we experienced 45 years ago. And, when we found one gene, we thought, that's the X-linked gene. We only have 2 more genes to find. And now we're up to 300. But it hasn't discouraged us. And it's really told us that the genetic makeup is as complex and as diverse as our community. And I really want to say, all of you, I'm at the end of my advocacy, and you maybe some of you are only at the beginning or halfway through. Don't give up. Believe in your strength. Believe that you will get there, and it will. If you wake up in the morning and you first of all start with I am enough, we are enough, and we will do it. That strength of your own conviction will take you into the most difficult situations and take you over the biggest hurdles. So I'm always amazed at the wonderful progress that we have made, and the wonderful people who have actually come to fight for us, whether they have a retinal degeneration or not. And I think for the group that we are, the number of patients we had before we added diabetic retinopathy or AMD, it was a small population, and yet we achieved so much. And I want to thank everybody who's here, like Christina and Avril and Ben Shaberman and all the people who've been around for a long time, and of all the contributions they've made. And we need the young people to build on this absolutely solid foundation. You know, politicians come and go, and Retina International will still be there. So don't give up.
That's wonderful, Claudette. Thank you. Just because we're tight in time, we do have another question here in for Silvia again. We heard from Christine about the importance of patients being able to identify where they can contribute. Can you tell us what was the key learning from patient involvement with your new model of partnerships with Opus Genetics?
Yeah, and I was about to type it. It might sound a little bit cheesy, but really the key learning is there is no limit to where our involvement is impacting. So from providing funding to providing inputs to the clinical trials, which are changing the protocol and design of the trial, to working with regulators, to Russell's point, and shaping new regulatory pathway, the power that we have as patients in building relationships with regulators, to every aspect, to be honest. And there is nothing where involving patients is actually helping, because we bring the sense of urgency, we bring the core focus on why this matters, we bring efficiency in mind. So, you know, we need to start somewhere. The real world data, I think we talked about it, like having that data that shape how a drug is developed and how a drug is taken forward is absolutely critical. So anything from get yourself known and put yourself in a registry, participate in a natural history study, you are shaping research, to all the way to some more sophisticated engagement you might have with regulators, or that's everything. It kind of shaping the way we can do things in a different way.
Thank you, Silvia. Benedict, can we hear you now? Unmute, if you can unmute. No, okay. So because we're so tight on time, I'm just going to hand you over very, very briefly to Ellen, my colleague, to tell you a little bit about our education hub, if you want to get a bit more involved. So Ellen, can you go ahead there?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Claire. So hi everyone, and we'll send out further details in the follow-up email with the recording of this webinar. So this is the 5th year of our education hub, and we'll be commencing in December, and it will run through until about April or May of next year. We're currently finalising the schedule, and there'll be about 8 to 9 modules, and it'll cover everything from an introduction to the eye, how visual function is assessed, the diagnosis and management of retinal diseases, challenges and gaps in the diagnosis and management, everything clinical trial endpoints. We've some new modules this year. We're going to look at AI in ophthalmology and the ethical considerations for it, patient registries and real world data, kind of innovation in inherited retinal disease and AMD. We'll also have a module on regulation and regulatory agencies, and then the future going forward and how to contribute. So we'll send out details of how to apply. It's up on our website, and we'll have more. Claire just put up there some of our faculty, including Russell has previously contributed, and we really encourage you to apply. It's a fantastic course. So thank you.
Okay, so Avril, I'll just hand back to you to close off, because we're just at 2:30 now.
Yes, we're just at time. It's a broad subject. There's so much we could speak to. I just want to thank our panelists for taking the time to participate in this webinar today. And it's important that you understand that there is a challenge. There is a challenge to patient representation. It's something that we need to be mindful of. I think with all of us, we may represent different diseases, be it the rare and inherited or the age-related. Working together is really important, and demonstrating through evidence why this community is important, you know, why our needs cannot continue to be unmet, why we matter, and why our experiences need to be considered. We can do that through education, but also, as Ben said, you know, just presenting our reality, our lived experience. What I would say to all of you is, while as we have to work on our specific areas, really coming together and building consensus is what it's all about. And we're lucky to have the support of really active and encouraging and participative clinicians and researchers and policymakers and innovators and pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies who all want to work together to find solutions. And we will continue to do so. And as you said, I think very importantly, Claudette, you know, politics is what it is. It comes and it goes. It can cause problems for a period. But if we stick together and we move forward together, we can overcome these hopefully temporary challenges and achieve our goals. This is one of the most innovative spaces that exists in all of healthcare. And we have a strong community ready to support each other. And I think the demonstration from Silvia today shows that we don't give up. So we continue on World Sight Day to celebrate this community, its resilience and its opportunities and its creativity and the necessity of ingenuity, as I always call it in this space. We have to find the solutions together, and we will. So I wish you, on behalf of Retina International, a really successful day, successful year. And we will be obviously in touch with all of you and remain here at your disposal if you have any questions. And we can certainly put you in touch with our panelists if you have anything specific that you would like to ask them. But thank you again for your time, and we'll see you soon on another webinar. So thanks to the team and thanks to everybody for being with us. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Avril.
much.
Guys,
Bye-bye.
thank you.